Welcome to the latest episode of the Digital Adoption Show. In this episode, we explore critical aspects of HR transformation and the significant impact of AI in overcoming enterprise challenges. Today, we have a panel of experts sharing their experiences and vision for the future of HR and frontline workforce management. Tune in for an insightful discussion that covers every angle of how AI is shaping the workplace. Our first guest is Jason Radisson, the visionary CEO and founder of Movo. With over 20 years of experience in innovation, he has a track record of scaling tech unicorns and enhancing work standards for millions. Drawing from his strategic expertise at McKinsey and Company and leadership roles at Uber and 99 Taxis. In this first segment, we hear from Jason about the hurdles startups face when trying to displace established incumbents in the enterprise technologies. Jason shared some of the key challenges and how AI is playing a role in addressing these issues.
Yeah, I think, so many challenges along the way. As startup captains, we make thousands of decisions a quarter, and, not all of them are great.
Yeah.
We always strive to get better and better at decision making, and small teams, I think, do a fairly decent job with it. What I would highlight is just, I think the real challenge in sort of broad enterprise technology is this cannibalization effect. How do you displace the big incumbents that are in the space? And I think there's so much that the systems integration companies, to name some of the names, places like Accenture, places like IBM, places like Slalom, some of the more specialized companies are out there really helping their large corporate clients to integrate the latest technologies into the hundreds of technologies they already buy. If it's a Fortune 500 company, then to also manage all of the change management, the rewriting of processes, the retraining of employees. I think as a startup captain, one of the hardest things, most challenging things in the enterprise space is connecting with that group and sort of bringing your technology into broader and broader audiences. It's easy, relatively easy to get a few first clients and to start to prove your technology. But then the scaling and working with the bigger channel partners that are out there, I think that's really the 5 to 10 year problem that I think most of us are facing.
Further, we saw that the year 2023 was largely focused on AI and machine learning across various sectors. We wanted to understand from Jason his thoughts on where he sees us standing in 2024 with AI in HR and human capital management. Here's what he had to say.
Yeah, I mean, I think, we're getting to a place where more people are experimenting. The Economist had a piece a few months back on how little adoption there was of any AI technology in the Fortune 500.
Great.
I think we're getting to a place where I would love to see a refresh of those numbers. Hopefully, my sense is it'll be a lot higher. Everybody's got a few things they're experimenting with. It's hard to say very broadly because I think it does the technology itself is still in that foundational phase. It's a little bit, people have made other comparisons. What did we say about mobile phones in 2008 or 2009, and we didn't really fully comprehend all the business models and all of the things that would come up, right? Our bet with Movo is there's a big opportunity to digitize the frontline workforce because you can give them a mobile phone and it's a proven model. Any of us that have been in the general management structure running any of these gig economy companies, we're used to looking at 1 million employees in real time and making decisions. It's a different war room. You have monitors on all the walls, and it's a little bit more like truly running a platform from a platform operations room. That future is available, and that's the future that we're working towards with Movo. For a lot of the typical B2B and enterprise problems, AI is going to take a while because it's going to require robotics. It's going to take 5 to 10 times as long as they do in software. It's going to require a lot of instrumentation. Consumer has been so easy in quotes because everybody has a PC and everybody has a mobile phone and off you go. A complex petrochemicals operation, the machinery, you've got to get instrumentation on all of that machinery. So I just think we're going to have a period of, I don't know, let's call it 5 to 50 years where
Mhm.
AI for big companies is going to be in very limited spaces. It's just going to take a long time.
Finally, we asked Jason to share a few examples of where AI has significantly improved the efficiency or effectiveness of HR operations for his client companies or any other examples. And I must say, Jason's response was quite interesting.
Yeah, yeah. So some of the big use cases that we're working on involve scheduling and the friction around being on a roster, being a part of a team, and then just the modern things. Employees are looking for
Mhm.
more flexibility since the pandemic. And so many, where whatever countries listeners are in and whatever labor markets listeners are in, so many of us are experiencing both high churn and shortage of workers. And so one of the key areas that we're working on with our clients is completely automating the scheduling process. So
Oh.
you look at these large retail companies, or if you
Mhm.
look at large manufacturing, logistics,
Yeah.
hospitals, supervisors, and even very senior supervisors can spend half of their time or more on scheduling people.
Right.
So one of our key areas of automation is that, and the net impact is that there's usually a strong reduction in employee turnover. There's a great reduction in flexibility because people can essentially interact with a bot and pick up shifts or, hand off shifts to a colleague or this
Yeah.
kind of thing. There are other areas. I think the talent automation space, which is the first problem that we tackled in the
Mhm.
pandemic with some success. We hired 700,000 people in the pandemic on our platform. I think that space is relatively well known. The product is, completely removed sort of you have a mobile experience where a worker just sort of onboards themselves or a candidate onboards themselves. I think that is another area that will become more broadly adopted, and there's just such an advantage. People are able to be hired in a few minutes and begin work weeks ahead of time. I
Mhm.
think that's a big one. Beyond that, like tasks is another area where we think there's a big opportunity in HR and operations for automation, and that's automatically
Mhm.
dispatching tasks across the company to the workers who
Mhm.
have the skills and the availability and are in the right location, frankly, to be able to handle the task. So there's a bunch out there already
Mhm.
where overall the impact of digitizing the frontline workforce can be 10, 20, or more percentage point improvement in productivity. And for large companies, it's the single biggest cost item for them is their frontline salaries. So it's real meaningful bottom line impact. And we're having this kind of impact with the different use cases that I mentioned in many different countries, in different situations. What everyone has in common is a difficult labor market and a lot of
Mhm.
employees. And if those two
Yeah.
things are
Mhm.
there, chances are you're going to have a big impact from digitizing your frontline workforce. And if you look at,
Yeah.
not everybody has the sort of the same patterns, and some of that
Yeah.
that difference in patterns inside the company make things particularly challenging. In hospitals, it's generally the ER, the emergency
Mhm.
room, which has crazy fluctuation in need when you've got a pool of nurses and doctors throughout the company that might
Yeah.
be cross-trained and able to work there, but they're on a different schedule. And as long as the company doesn't have systems to recognize it, it relies on frontline supervisors to be calling people, trying to get them into work to cover.
Mhm.
These are a lot of inefficiencies in the world. And as I said, these frontline jobs are not going away anytime soon because they require robotics. It's not just a, software
Mhm.
in the cloud kind of a job. So we've got this opportunity, maybe the next 20 or 30 years, to really optimize them and really help people get ahead.
That was quite an intriguing discussion with Jason Radisson, and we got to hear some amazing thoughts on AI's impact on HR. Our next guest was JD Dillon. JD's career path is as thrilling as a Disney roller coaster. He began managing movie theaters at AMC, quickly rising to manager by age 19. Later, he transitioned to the Walt Disney World Resort, overseeing attractions and custodial operations. Today, JD is the Chief Learning Officer at Exonify and founder of LearnGeek, where he focuses on empowering frontline employees through innovative learning solutions. We wanted to absorb as much of JD's experience with the frontline workforce as possible. In this next segment, JD shares how AI can break down barriers to learning and make training more accessible to employees with diverse needs. We asked JD if he could share a real life example of how AI is making a difference.
I refer to AI as an opportunity to transform learning and development into an equity machine. Because as I mentioned earlier, I think there's a disconnect between how corporate teams think in the frontline experience day to day and the types of support as a result that people receive. And I think there's a lot of barriers and obstacles that frontline employees have to jump over just to get basic help or basic training. And when you talk about AI, a lot of people talk about things like, well, how much faster we can build content. So kind of gain efficiencies there, maybe even give tools to other people in the organization so that we can provide not just more content, but go after more problems and more solutions and connect people with that content. So you talk about things like, digital assistance and the ability to ask questions. And instead of having, again, searched through your knowledge base, you can just ask the question and get the answer. So there's a lot of different opportunities that are going to make learning and development more personalized, more available, more embedded into the experience of work. But for me, it's things like translation, where I know for a fact there are a lot of situations where people are just trying to understand the information, yet alone learn it, because maybe the organization, because translation historically has been an expensive, time-consuming challenge. And in my case, my past organizations, we would translate content into a limited number of options. So you might have the base information available in English, and then maybe we translate into Spanish. And maybe Disney, we translated into Vietnamese because we had a large population of the workforce that preferred to speak Vietnamese. But you don't know every person's preferred language and how much of an obstacle trying to understand the information before you then try to learn it creates for somebody. So already today, AI is helping us translate content at very high levels of quality very quickly. So it's less about me as learning and development making the decision around what languages should we make the content available in. Well, now it's becoming a conversation about you as the employee just deciding what language you prefer to experience information in, and technology helping make those adjustments for you so that that barrier is removed. And then another one that I think is really interesting and exciting is when you think about frontline workers, some people might just not be great readers, right? So they may struggle to read, even in their own preferred language, some basic information about doing the job, which may make them guess. Maybe they don't tell people that they might be struggling to read information, or maybe it makes them really reliant on the person next to them because they can't access and find and review information to do their job. Well, with AI, we're finding abilities to adjust information. So maybe one, it's more easily understood, because a lot of times, like standard operating procedures, they're written for the legal team, right? They're not necessarily written for everybody to really understand and really use based on how I do the job. So AI's ability to get very specific and convey information in a way that's more understandable to each individual is huge. And then you take that another step with tools like voice capability. Maybe if you're not a great reader, the machine can just talk to you. So instead of you having to figure out how to use this tool and what to search for and what words to use, you can just ask the question verbally in your preferred language, and the machine can answer you back in your preferred language with the information that you need. So just those types of ideas of how we're going to be able to use this technology to elevate the kind of equitable learning experience that everyone deserves. And I think it's going to come down to so many different places that we can leverage this tech to enhance the employee experience overall. But I get really excited about those like known challenges that organizations have been trying to overcome for a long time to make sure people get the help they need, that we're already starting to overcome thanks to improvements around AI and generative AI.
In the next question, we asked JD, how can companies best develop these skills in their existing frontline workforce, considering diverse learning styles and backgrounds? And I must say, JD did not disappoint us with his response.
One, I think you have to get very specific about what people need to do. So what are the core knowledge and skill requirements for people who are doing different types of work? And then it comes down to, well, how do we make sure people get the help they need to complete that work and be able to do those things based on where they are in their experience of learning. Because some people, if you work in retail, one person walks through the door for the job, they've worked in retail for 30 years. They definitely understand how to take payments and work the point of sale system and stock products and these kind of basic core skills of working in a retail store. And then another person never worked in retail ever before. And oftentimes we'll put those two people through the exact same training experience. One person gets overwhelmed because there's so much new stuff to learn. The other person gets bored and almost feels disrespected because I've done this before. Just let me do the job, right? So how do we personalize that experience for each individual? And I think a lot of that is using data more effectively as learning and development. So we can quickly get a sense of where people are and say, well, we can tell that you're struggling in certain areas. This is new to you. So we're going to really focus on these certain topics or skills that are really important to the job. But this other individual, wow, you are moving quickly. We can tell you know this stuff. Let's accelerate your experience and let's focus on some more advanced topics or advanced skills, or maybe even highlight your capability to the management team to say, this person might be the person you want to look at for the next supervisor position or the next key holder position, because they clearly know what they're doing. So really leverage technology and data to get an understanding of where people are quickly and then adapt the experience of learning and support to each individual. So the manager especially knows, okay, where do I need to spend some additional time? Or maybe, no, they know what they're doing. I'm not going to check in as often with this person over here. They've got it. I'm going to spend a little more time with this member of my team over here because the data shows that they're struggling and they need some help in these different areas. So I think that idea, and then continuing to acknowledge and recognize that, and this is true for every employee, right? Learning is not a purely digital experience. And that's especially true on the front line, because if you ask frontline employees, what's the most valuable learning experience that you get? It's hands-on training, right? It's doing the job and learning how to do it with a peer or learning how to do it with your manager. And then technology becomes augmentative to that experience where I get some foundational information, I get support information, help troubleshoot through different things. So you can learn certain things digitally or get support digitally. But a lot of it comes down to, well, if I'm learning how to use this piece of equipment, I need help to learn how to physically use this piece of equipment. I might get the basics of how to drive a lift truck from technology. I may do some simulation before I get in the lift truck so I safely know how to operate it. But eventually I got to get in the lift truck and practice actually maneuvering my way through the facility and picking things up and those types of processes. So I think it's really understanding the different types of learning activities and how they're valued and how important they are to learning different types of skills, and then crafting an experience that, again, meets people where they are and focuses especially on the things that are most important for frontline employees today. I think that's where a lot of organizations struggle, is that sometimes people are so frustrated, or there's so many challenges that they run into in their everyday work, and there's so much friction in the day-to-day work experience and kind of getting simple questions answered, or knowing how to overcome this particular challenging customer situation, that it becomes hard to look forward and think beyond today and start talking about things like career development and cross-training and additional education programs and all of those different types of ideas that the HR department often focuses on as ideas around attracting people to the workplace and retaining people in the workplace through development opportunities. But I think it starts with today. How do you make today as easy and as frictionless as possible? Because ultimately, frontline employees want to do a good job today, right? It doesn't matter if they're there because they need to collect a paycheck to take care of their family, or they're there because they're trying to build a career. They want to do a good job today. Get me the help I need, the training I need, the support I need to be good today and every shift. And then we can start talking about, well, how do we spin that into the opportunities for tomorrow? So for me, it's really using data, technology, and an understanding of how work is done to really focus on what kind of support can we provide today. And then the last thing I'll say is I have a particular passion around managers, because I believe when you're a frontline employee, you don't work for your company. You work for your manager, because you don't see the company very often, right? You rarely see the corporate team. Maybe there's a message from the CEO once in a while. Maybe there's a site visit from district managers, or the corporate team shows up once in a while. But you see your manager every day. They're the person who hired you. They schedule you. They decide what work you do, what training you have access to. They are the employee experience for a lot of people. And they're key to fostering the type of community and collaboration and experience that makes frontline work more than tolerable can actually become an enjoyable, rewarding experience. But everything begins with the manager, because a great manager can make an okay job an awesome experience. A bad manager can make an okay job intolerable. So if you as an organization want to improve the experience of your frontline workers, make sure they have the knowledge and skill needed to do great work to help your business be successful and to reach the goals and hit the priorities you're trying to achieve. For me, if you make one investment, invest in the management team, because you need them to be focused on the right things, to be capable of leading their team, to be able to support people when there are challenges, and to be able to handle all of the different priorities that are put on a frontline manager. And that's me speaking from experience of having been in these types of roles. It's a hard job. It's a long type of a job. It's a 70, 80-hour type of work week job often to be a frontline manager. So they need help to prioritize the right things, to focus on the right things, and especially to focus on their teams. That's how you foster a capable, comfortable, confident frontline workforce, is through the management team, as opposed to directly focusing on the employees. Because if you focus on the employees and you don't have the managers in place, things are going to start to enable that management team and they feel good about their work and they're focused on the teams. Then you can make really meaningful investments in your employees and build the type of kind of local communities and local capabilities that you need to be successful as a business. So there's kind of certain things you got to think about when you're building an enablement strategy for the frontline workforce. And includes the entire group that's there, but I still think the most important player, more important than learning and development, is the local management team and making sure they've got what they need to take care of their people.
This was indeed a fantastic discussion. The panel and their insights on HR transformation, frontline workforce development, technology integration were incredibly enlightening. To our listeners, we encourage you to explore these thought provoking conversations on the Digital Adoption Show across all major podcast platforms, including Spotify, Apple, Google, YouTube, and much more. Whether you are at home or on the go, a podcast is your gateway to the latest trend in learning and development. I'm your host, Neha Smriti, signing off. Stay tuned for more engaging and informative episodes in the future. Thank you.